Monday Music Motivation. This one is kind of funny compared to last week. Last week I was talking about you just finished up a big project and now you're moving on and starting a new, or like sort of what to do between projects. Today I'm talking about how to prepare for the performance or the project because I actually have a performance coming up tomorrow. This isn't a huge performance. This is just the community band that my wife and I are in sort of for fun. So it's a pretty low stakes performance for me, but I'm really looking forward to it and excited. And I gave my wife some advice that I think would be helpful for everyone to have. So what that advice is to listen to the music before the performance. And this is one of my favorite ways to prep for a concert or for a performance, is to just sort of get in the zone of the music. It doesn't have to be crazy practicing. In middle school, my band director said the day of or the day before the performance, you're not going to fix anything. There's nothing that you can learn and really have it meaningfully stick in the day of or even the day before the performance. It doesn't hurt to practice those days, but you're not going to change anything. You're just going to be sort of getting familiar and getting in the zone. And I think one of the easiest and best ways to do that is just by listening to the recordings of the music. So that's my sort of advice for going into preparing for the concert. And the reason why that's so helpful is because if you think about the community band setting, I think most community bands rehearse once a week. And that's what this one does too. We rehearse once a week. And a lot of people in the group are busy with other parts of life, kids, jobs, all kinds of other stuff going on, that they just aren't able to practice the music every single day. My wife, earlier in the concert cycle, we practiced about once on our own, separate from the group rehearsal. But as she learned the music better and we didn't need to practice quite as much, it sort of fell to the back burner because it wasn't that sort of pressure at the beginning of like, oh, this is really new, really unfamiliar, feels really difficult. As it became more familiar, the extra practices sort of fell off just because all the other stuff that has to get done in life. So going into it, if you're practicing and seeing this music only the once a week at the rehearsal, it's pretty much just enough time. You have your rehearsal, that's great, it refreshes things, you learn new things, you get more familiar with it, and the music's there, and by the end of rehearsal you're feeling really good about it, and you sort of get to this level with it, and then the next day it gets a little rustier and a little rustier and a little rustier and a little rustier, and then the next rehearsal comes around, and at the beginning you have that sensation of like, whoa, have I played this before? This seems really unfamiliar. And then by the end of rehearsal, you're like, oh yeah, I've dusted it off. I know where I'm at, and you're good. And then it gets rustier and rustier and rustier. And that's sort of the cycle of the community band life, which is totally normal. It's just how it is. But we can very easily shift that without even having to practice in between, just by listening. Because what listening to the music does, especially if you listen and follow along with your music, it helps to really dust it off in between, and it just sort of refreshes it, and your brain's like, oh yeah, I've heard this music before, I know how this goes, I can anticipate like how I'm going to be wiggling my fingers on this and what's going to be going on in the music. So then instead of getting here by the end of rehearsal and getting rustier and rustier, rustier, you listen and you're like, oh yeah, I've dusted it off a little bit. And then it gets rustier and rustier. But then instead of starting back down here at the next week, maybe you start here, and then maybe you get a little bit further, because in the rehearsal, you're not panicking like, oh man, this feels really unfamiliar and uncomfortable. And instead you're like, oh, I never realized I could do this fingering here instead. Or, oh, this is an interesting, nice little phrase if I crescendo here or diminuendo there. And then you start adding on new things, and then it gets rustier and rustier and rustier. But when you listen to it, maybe you hear those things in the recording then and dust off a little bit more. So it's sort of maintaining things. And of course, if you can practice 3 times a week outside of rehearsal, that's the best thing to be doing. But again, this is a community band, not a professional ensemble. So that's not always a fair expectation to have to be able to practice 3 times outside of rehearsal. So as we're going into the concert tomorrow, that's where you really get in trouble, is because if you dress rehearsal last week went pretty good, you felt like you really knew these pieces and you're ready for the concert, but then it got rustier and rustier and rustier and rustier and rustier. In the concert, there's no time to dust off the rust. There's no time to dust it off and refresh and refamiliarize yourself with the music, because that first piece is going. And I'll tell you, for this concert, the first piece is potentially the hardest piece on the program too. So we're going to want to make sure that we're not rusty going into that. So what we're going to do is listen to it, follow along with the music, dust it off tonight and maybe tomorrow before the performance, so that it's not feeling unfamiliar right off the bat in the actual performance. So that's my advice for all of you going into a concert. Getting prepared for a performance, especially in these community band type situations where you're not practicing the music every day, is to just listen to the recording. That's all you have to do to refresh the things, so that the performance isn't the dusting off. The performance is the polished performance that you're delivering to the audience, because that's what the audience deserves. Even for a community band ensemble, even for a casual recital of you and some friends, we always want to be giving our best to the audience, not dusting it off in front of the audience. So that's my advice for today. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts about that in the comments. And most importantly, get your plan figured out. You can go to the link in the description, quickstartclarinet.com/get-started, to check out this template, or you can make it for yourself. Date for the week, reflection on how things went last week, goal for this week, and then most importantly, those actual times that you're going to practice, an actual plan for what you're going to practice. And you can see the concerts tomorrow on Tuesday. I have Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I'm going to be doing some score studying. There's a piece I'm conducting on the concert, so it's score studying for that, but also I'm going to be listening and dusting things off. I might actually practice a little bit because I do have time to actually practice, so I might dust some stuff off tomorrow afternoon, so that I'm fresh and can give my best to the audience. So that's it for this week's Monday Music Motivation. Go fill out your template, plan what you're doing. If you want a little extra accountability, you could comment on this video with what your plan is for this week and what you want to accomplish and when you're going to practice, so that you can actually put in the work and put it to action and make it happen. And I'll cheer you on for sure if you comment that. But most importantly, do it, fill it out, put it in your calendar, and have a great week of practicing. And I will see you all next week for the next live Monday Music Motivation. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.